Evet arkadaşlar, bir yayına daha hoş geldiniz. Bu yayında Northrop Grumman'ın fırlatılışını izleyeceğiz Antares roketiyle. Şimdi NASA'nın açmasını bekliyoruz. 5 dakika içinde açarlar büyük ihtimalle. Nasıl olacak kısım? Evet, arkadan yankı geliyorsa yazabilirsiniz. Yankıyı kapattım ama yankının gelmemesi lazım şu an. Evet, sanırım gelmiyor.
Poised on top of the pad is the Antares 230 Plus rocket. On top of that is Northrop Grumman's Cygnus cargo vehicle and 8,000 pounds of research, fresh food, technology demonstrations and supplies.
Evet, görüyorsunuz şurada son 17,5 dakika kalmış. Evet. 17 dakika kalmış. Şimdi bakalım, Wallop adalarından fırlatılacak bu roket. Roketin amacı uzaya Cygnus 15 diye bir uyduyu fırlatacak roket. Pardon, bir saniye. Bu Cygnus 15'te orada Amerika'ya askeri sağlayacak, avantaj sağlayacak. Neyin nerede olduğunu daha rahat görebilecekler. Fırlatıcı NASA, fakat yani roket NASA'nın, fırlatan şirket de NASA. Fakat görev NASA'nın değil, Northrop Grumman'ın, yani Amerika'nın uzay şirketinin bir tane. Şimdi biz de onun fırlatılmasını bekliyoruz. Son 17 dakika kaldı. Pardon, son 17 değilmiş.
Conditions today looking at about 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees centigrade, and that we can expect that same temperature at the T0 mark at 11:36 a.m. Central, 12:36 p.m. Eastern. Looking at some scattered deck and cloud ceilings and monitoring some wind gusts, but overall we're looking at about a 75% favorability margin. We are 75% go for launch today. 351, enable your local launch. Mission Control Houston and the Mission Operations Center in Dulles, Virginia have conducted a preliminary T-minus 2-hour go-no-go poll and are go for launch. They're about to come up on another go poll at the T-minus 30 mark. Enabled and illuminated. RSO.
Sanırım son ne kadar kaldığını öğrenemeyeceğiz, yani sesler dışında. Evet, bu arada görevin adı Katherine Johnson'ın görevi. Eski Northrop Grumman çalışanı. Geçen yıl Aralık ayında vefat etti maalesef. Ondan dolayı görevin adını da Katherine Johnson koydular. Onu gösteriyorlar şimdi.
Calculations were critical to America's success during our first human spaceflight missions. Again, this is February 20th, the 59th anniversary of John Glenn's flight. And when he again became the first American to orbit the Earth, it is a perfect tie to the SS Katherine Johnson. While NASA had used the IBM computers to calculate the complex orbital trajectory, Glenn asked to have Katherine Johnson verify the calculations by hand and would not fly until she gave the go. We have teams supporting from all over the United States for today's launch, counting down to 12:36 p.m. Eastern. Over at the Wallops Flight Facility, you're looking at Wallops Range Control Center, counting down and walking us through these next steps over the next 33 minutes to a T0 mark. On top of the Antares rocket, we have the Northrop Grumman's mission.
Evet, şimdi ekibi görüyoruz, çalışan ekibi. Bu roketin durumunu onlar yönetecek.
Dwyer for launch. He'll be handing over to Amy Allison for solar array deployment. And of course, the destination for Cygnus after its day and a half in orbit will be the International Space Station. Mission Control Houston standing by and watching the launch and monitoring the operations of the International Space Station in flight. Flight Director Scott Stover is here in the room and just gave that T-minus 30 go for launch from Mission Control Houston. Visiting Vehicle Officer working with teams in Dulles, Virginia is Jessica Doy. Now, of course, the primary job for today is watching for the launch and making sure everything is go for launch. But we do have 24/7 hour operations for onboard International Space Station operations. We are in a weekend, but the crew on board is enjoying a day off, a day of cleaning, and some exercise, and of course they'll be watching today's launch. From left to right, we have the Expedition 64 crew, NASA astronaut Kate Rubins and NASA astronaut Victor Glover, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency Soichi Noguchi, and then ISS Commander Sergei Ryzhikov. We also have NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins and Shannon Walker, and rounding out at the very right side is Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Kutsverchkov. Again, we just came to Mission Control Houston while polling a go for launch at T-minus 30 minutes. Currently tracking no issues with the Antares rocket either. And Mission Operations Center in Dulles, Virginia is also tracking everything is healthy with the Cygnus vehicle on top. Now coming up on 30 minutes to launch. Joining us for today's broadcast from Northrop Grumman, we'll be welcoming Christina Halona, Antares Systems Engineering Program Manager, to walk us through some of the features and milestones for today's launch. Christina, welcome.
Thank you, Gary. I'm happy to be here and welcome all of you watching here in the United States and around the world to see a successful Antares launch and Cygnus mission to the International Space Station.
Wonderful. We're getting a look at the pad now, looking at the Antares rocket, billing off some conditioned air. Tell us about this rocket, Antares 230 Plus.
Yeah, so Gary, the Antares 230 Plus vehicle is an upgrade to our previous Antares 230 vehicle, which was under the previous CRS-1 contract. This NG-15 mission marks...
Evet, görevi komite başkanı ile konuştular şimdi.
Very first Antares 230 Plus mission, which was flown in November of 2019. The differences between the 230 and 230 Plus are the upgrades to the Stage 1 core, which has lighter composite structures and an optimized second stage motor. The upgraded Stage 1 core allows Antares engines to perform at full thrust throughout most of the first stage profile. The 230 Plus vehicle also has a cargo mass flexibility in which the Cygnus mass can be defined with agreed upon constraints, of course, but no later than 24 hours prior to launch. So speaking of cargo, another capability of the Antares 230 Plus rocket is that Antares can perform late load operations by the unique pot-top fairing and specialized ground equipment. If you look closely at Antares, you can see the nose of the rocket, and you'll be able to see the little pop-off that we have there, and that can be removed for the late cargo load. And Antares having the ability to do a late load cargo load 24 hours before launch, we're able to support critical research experiments for NASA. And with all this talk about cargo, the Antares vehicle is carrying approximately 8,200.
Evet, bu arada şu an gördüğünüz görüntü canlı değil. Roketin hazırlanış durumu şu anda. Canlı değil yani.
Are dedicated to providing the best value to our customer in support of our critical mission, of their critical missions.
Now, Christina, we're getting some footage from earlier when we were performing that late load capability.
Önceden hazırlanmasını yayınlıyorlar. Bir hafta önceki görüntüyü şimdi burada yayınlıyorlar. Yani roketin az önceki görünümü canlıydı fakat şu an gördüğünüz video canlı değil.
Is ready to carry such a mass to the International Space Station.
Yes, Gary, you're correct. Cygnus is near max capacity at 8,200 pounds for this mission. The Cygnus team has been...
Roketin burnunu takıyorlar yerine.
To not only add more cargo, but also add more capability to the spacecraft itself to support powered payloads. Cygnus has implemented additional communications and telemetry equipment to connect scientists with their experiments throughout the mission from liftoff to arrival at the International Space Station. All of these enhancements point us toward a long-term goal of growing Cygnus capabilities beyond.
Evet, şimdi roketin iç parçalarını görüyoruz. Roketin içinin krokisini.
And valuable commercial partner for the next generation vehicle that will go to the moon. And Gary, as you mentioned before, Cygnus, we're so happy that we're able to honor Katherine Johnson for this mission and named her for NG-15. You know, as you mentioned before, Katherine Johnson was an amazing NASA mathematician, and she broke many barriers, including race and gender, while working for NASA, and delivered critical calculations for a very important mission that happened on this day. I just also want to mention, you know, as a Native American and from the Navajo Nation, Katherine Johnson was an inspiration for me and countless others to pursue degrees in aerospace, in the aerospace industry. So I'm very honored to be part of the Human Exploration Program, and I also hope to inspire others as Katherine Johnson has to reach the stars when setting their goals. So very happy to be here.
Very good. Christina Halona, thank you for joining us. We'll come back to you here shortly to walk us through some of these upcoming milestones we have, including counting down to that launch mark at 12:36 p.m. Eastern, and of course walking us through ascent. We're going to go through some of the great cargo on board. This is a...
Evet, şimdi de uydu hakkında bilgi alıyoruz. 932 kiloymuş bu arada. Olarak da pardon. Uzay yürüyüşünde 24 kilo olarak geçiyormuş. Dünyanın yörüngesindeki konumu. Yani tam olarak uzaya çıkmayacak. Tam arada bir yerde duracak gibi. Aslında atmosferin boyutundan kaynaklı bir şey bu. Bu arada görüyorsunuz şu an uydudaki yüksek performanslı bilgisayarın ikinci sürümü ilk kez uzaya fırlatılacak. Onun da resimlerini gösteriyorlar. Alttaki eskisi, üstteki yenisi, onu da değiştirecekler. Yani bir görevde iki görev yapmış olacaklar. Hem uydu fırlatacaklar hem de eski bilgisayarı değiştirecekler.
With the goal of having the system operate seamlessly for a year. It successfully performed more than 1 trillion calculations per second for 207 days without requiring a reset. The Spaceborne Computer 2 will build on the success of this first study, exploring how off-the-shelf computer systems can advance exploration by processing data significantly faster in space with edge computing and artificial intelligence. This experiment plans to demonstrate that Earth-based data processing of current station science data can instead be performed on the station. Eliminating the need for researchers to send the raw data back to Earth for analysis could speed scientists' time to insight from months to minutes. We'll also have some space worms heading to the International Space Station. Tiny worms could help us determine the cause of muscle weakening that astronauts can experience in microgravity. Astronauts work out for more than 2 hours a day aboard the station to prevent bone and muscle loss caused by living in a microgravity environment during long-duration missions. Thanks to a new device for measuring the muscle strength of tiny C. elegans worms, researchers with the Micro 16 study can test whether decreased expression of muscle proteins is associated with this decreased strength, and these results may support new therapies to combat the effects of age-related muscle loss on Earth. Now, of course, some of these investigations are scientific and some of them are technology demonstrations meant for exploring farther into the solar system. There's an investigation called AHOS. The International Space Station serves as a testing ground for technologies we plan to use on future Artemis missions to the moon. Now, the AHOS investigation from NASA puts to the test some tools planned for use on the crewed Artemis 2 mission that will orbit the moon.
Evet, şimdi gösteriyorlar. Görevin bir parçasından biri de bu. Ay'a giderkenki şeyleri test edeceklermiş. Ay'a giderkenki teknolojilerini test edeceklermiş. Burada gördüğünüz aletle. Bunun içinde özel deney kitleri var, kendi içinde dışarıdan gözükmeyen. Onlarla uzayda testler yapıp sonra geri dünyaya gönderecekler. Tabii dünyaya da görülmeyecek. O içinde bir tane de kamera bulunacak. O kamera belli bir süre sonra kapanacak. Fakat ben de o kameradan size gösterebildiğim kadar göstermeye çalışacağım. NASA'nın açıp açmayacağını bilmiyorum. Fakat var.
Demonstration to upgrade the environmental control and life support systems. This is a system of regenerative life support hardware that provides clean air and water to the space station. The system will get an upgrade thanks to the Exploration ECLIS. That's environmental control and life support system. This is the brine processor assembly. The investigation demonstrates technology to recover additional water from the urine processor assembly using a membrane distillation process. Now, long-duration crewed exploration missions require about 98% water recovery, and there's currently no state-of-the-art technology in brine processing that can help achieve this goal, but this is one step closer. The brine processor assembly plans to close the gap for the urine waste system on the space station. Now, these are all investigations going to the space station. We have another one that's actually going to be deployed shortly after the second stage ignition. NASA, in partnership with Virginia Space, is helping launch.
Evet, şimdi canlı görüntüyü görüyoruz. Şu an roketin canlı olarak görüntüsü bu. Orada zaman 17-15 geçiyor. Bizde 21'i 49 geçiyor. Bu arada kalan zamanı veriyorlar. Son 21 dakika.
ThinSats will be released from the second stage shortly after launch and will transmit data for approximately 5 days before deorbiting and burning up upon re-entry into Earth's atmosphere.
Evet, görüyorsunuz şimdi 21 dakika.
Again, currently tracking no issues to launch, and Antares and Cygnus looking good at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport on Pad 0A. You're looking at a live shot from Virginia. Now,
Son 20 dakika kalmış.
And the technology demonstration hardware is some fresh food. The astronauts aboard the International Space Station can be expecting some cherry tomatoes, some apples, and navel oranges. They'll also get some cold stowed cheese, Parmesan, and sharp Wisconsin cheddar. Christina, Helena, we are coming up on 20 minutes to launch, counting down to the launch window opening at 12:36 p.m. Eastern, 12:36 and 49 seconds. That's at the opening of the window. Tell us about some of the milestones that Antares has gone through up until this point and will go through to the T0 mark.
Sure, Gary. So approximately 5 hours ago, of course, our amazing launch team arrived at Wallops Island in Dallas, Virginia, and Chandler, Arizona, in preparation for launch. The team at the launch pad will also went through their checks prior to evacuating the site, and then shortly after, we went through our pre-power up verifications right before we power up the Antares vehicle. Once we power up Antares, we run various tests and checks to ensure all is working well on the vehicle prior to doing our propellant loading. The team also gets various weather updates and range updates to ensure weather and range is clear for launch as well. At this point in time, it's about 10:17 a.m. We're just finishing off the tail end of the propellant loading operations.
Evet, bu arada şimdi fırlatılacağı yeri de gösterdim size. Burası şöyle göstereyim hatta. Wallop Adaları. Amerika'nın New Jersey eyaletinde bulunuyor. Buradan fırlatacaklar. Daha da yaklaşalım isterseniz. Evet. Tam şuradan bir yerden fırlatıyorlar. Adanın asıl merkezi burada, fakat onları buradan fırlatacaklar. Tamamdır.
From the moment of liftoff, what can we expect to see?
Okay, so Antares will have a stage 1 ignition at T-0, and we'll lift off shortly after. The main engines will burn for approximately 200 seconds, and then we'll go into MECO. And if you hear MECO, it stands for main engine cutoff. So once we get to MECO, we'll go into a short coast right before we separate stage 1 from stage 2, which we call the upper stack portion of Antares. We'll continue to coast a little bit longer for about 30 seconds before fairing separation, and then we'll have an internal separation where the stage 2 flies out of the external upper stack. Once that stage 2.
Evet, az önce benim gösterdiğim konumu onlar da gösteriyorlar. Wallop Adaları, Virginia'da, New Jersey eyaletinde Amerika'nın.
And then Cygnus will be released into the desired orbit. After Cygnus is.
Evet arkadaşlar, roketin yanından çıkan dumanı görüyorsunuz. Roket aniden ısınırsa patlayacağı için yavaştan içinden ısıtıyorlar, yani içindeki roketleri hafiften kısık bir şekilde çalıştırıyorlar ki içi oradaki ısıya alışsın fırlatırken herhangi bir sıkıntı çıkmasın. Yani bu da fırlatılışa 15 dakikadan az kaldığını gösteriyor.
Orbital insertion. At that time, we will break our coverage, but we'll still be here in Mission Control Houston monitoring the solar array deployment. That takes place a few hours later, and confirm that over some of our social media sites and our blog. Make sure it is receiving enough power. Now, it's going to spend, Cygnus will spend about a day and a half in orbit, catching up with the International Space Station. It's scheduled to be captured by the robotic arm of the International Space Station at 4:40 a.m. Eastern Time, 3:40 a.m. Central Time on Monday, February 2nd. The robotic arm operators on board the International Space Station will be JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi. NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins will be backing him up from inside the cupola. For that coverage, we'll be starting at 2 a.m.
Evet, bu arada önümüzdeki ayın 6 Mart'ta bu fırlatılan tam uzayda kurulacak. Bunun ISS'e sabitlenmesi için şey yapacaklar. Astronotlar kuracak onu oraya. Evet, zaten görüyorsunuz şimdi Uluslararası Uzay İstasyonunda Cygnus 5 tam şurada olduğu gibi görülecek. Orada Cygnus 5 yazıyor, Soyuz'un yanında. Orada olduğu gibi oraya bağlanacak. Orada dünyanın daha rahat bir şekilde gözlemlenmesini sağlayacak. ISS'e katkısı olacak. Bu arada CREV 1 Dragon'un yayınını yapamadım. En solda bulunan CREV 1 Dragon'un. Onun için çok zamanım yoktu. Ondan dolayı kusura bakmayın. O da insanlı fırlatılıştı fakat şeyden dolayı yayın lisansından dolayı yapamadım. Bu arada son 14,5 dakika.
Copy that. Check 386. And admin 387 is not required. And launch team be advised 388 is not required.
This is Mission Control Houston coming up inside 15 minutes, counting down to 14. We're still tracking our launch at the opening of the 5-minute window, 12:36 and 49 seconds p.m. Eastern Time over in Virginia, 11:36 a.m. Central Time here in Houston. Again, everything is still looking.
Evet, son 13 dakika.
They're topping off some of the fuel in the Antares rocket already loaded with that liquid fuel, RP-1 kerosene, and liquid oxygen, billowing off some of the conditioned air into the 32-degree Fahrenheit weather out there at Virginia. Still at about 75% favorability for launch today.
LC, this is CMD. Cygnus is in launch mode and nominal. Copy that, CMD.
Evet, son 12 dakika.
And launch team LC countdown 1. At this time, I'm going to poll to proceed with final countdown. GSO?
GSO, go.
RSO?
RSOs, go.
TD?
TDs, go.
Prop lead?
Prop leads go.
Stage 1?
LC, stage 1 is go. Helium topping is ongoing.
Copy that. Core 1?
In honor of Alexander Diktarov, the late Director General of the Yuzhnoye Design Office, whose efforts in international spaceflight have contributed to the success of Antares, Core 1 is go.
Copy Core 1. MES 1?
MES is go.
Evet, son kontrolleri yapıyorlar şimdi. Bu arada son 11 dakika.
Mars?
Mars is go.
CMD? CMD is go. LD?
LD is go.
NG?
Northrop Grumman is proud to honor NASA mathematician and space visionary Katherine Johnson, whose computational brilliance and relentless pursuit of excellence set the standard for 60 years of NASA mission success. Katherine humbly yet forcefully broke the barriers of gender and race to enable the future of human space exploration and in the process inspire generations. On this anniversary of John Glenn's historic Friendship 7 flight, which would not have been possible without Katherine's calculations, Northrop Grumman and the SS Katherine Johnson are go for launch.
Copy, NG. Launch team is go to proceed with final countdown. Check 393.
Coming up on 11 minutes to launch, you just heard that poll. We are go for launch. Again, continuing to watch that weather, but targeting still the opening of our 5-minute window at
Evet, son 10 dakika.
p.m. Eastern Time. Christina Halona, if you're still with us, hearing some of the words coming from the Mission Operations Center and all the teams working so hard on this mission, tell me about some of your thoughts as we're coming up on...
Evet, rüzgar arttı, rötar yaptırabilirler fakat oradaki hava çıkışı daha da artmış, yani fırlatışa daha az kaldığını gösteriyor. Zaten kalan süreyi de görüyorsunuz, 10 dakika var.
At our various telemetry data to make sure the health and status of the vehicle are within constraints. As you just heard, there was a no-go poll of our Antares chief engineers, safety officers, and leaders to continue the countdown. And we'll continue to monitor the telemetry stream and make sure Antares is healthy and ready to go for launch here in a few minutes.
Evet, son 9 dakika.
That shortly, vehicle systems look healthy, and we're still 75% favorable. And again, we're targeting the beginning of that 5-minute window. So now that we've conducted that final go no go at the T-minus 10-minute mark, we'll be counting down to about T-minus 5. Antares will switch to internal power at that time, and just a little more than 3 minutes will be the auto sequence handoff to terminal count. The computers will take over for the final steps to get us to launch at the opening of that window.
Ops 1, ACS VDMs, internal power on.
VDMs enabled, voltage nominal, ODM commands are clear.
Copy, all LEC 1, check steps 396 and 397.
Evet, son 8 dakika bu arada. Son kontrolleri tekrardan yaptılar. Evet, son 7 dakika. Siz görmüyorsunuz ama ben kenardan bakıyorum.
Mark.
LC site control GN2 conditioning initiated.
Copy, site control, check 399.
Inside 7.5 minutes, you're hearing some of those countdown milestones. Internal power has been activated. It'll be switched here shortly for the Antares vehicle. The International Space Station is currently flying 262 statute miles over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, just east off the coast of Brazil.
Evet, son 6 dakika.
LC, this is Top Lead. VTSO activation verified.
Copy that, lead. Check 400, Ops 2, 401, initialize ground ordnance power supplies.
LC Ops 2, ground ordnance power supplies initialized.
Roger that.
Like 1 confirms, ground ordnance power supply is nominal.
Copy like 1, check 402.
Evet, gaz çıkışında bayağı bir artış var, görüyorsunuz. Hidrojen vardı oradan çıkan.
T-minus 6 minutes. Mark.
İçine önce hidrojen dolduruyorlar, orada şey olsun, basınç olsun diye. Katı bir şey doldursalar fazladan ağırlık yapar ama dışının öyle kalması için hidrojen dolduruyorlar. Şimdi o hidrojen boşaltılıyor, onun yerine oraya sıcak hava dolduruluyor.
These final minutes up until launch. Any final words before we let you go?
Son 5 dakika.
No, I'm just thankful to be here, and I appreciate the invite, and I'm looking forward to successful launch. Go in Terry.
Ops 2, LC, step 404, you go to initiate engine priming at T-minus 5 minutes.
Evet, son 4 dakika.
Started.
And Ops 1, transfer avionics to internal power.
Avionics internal power on. External power off.
Now inside, 5 minutes to launch. Antares is now switched to internal power. Christina Halona, thanks for joining us today. But of course, she's going to be busy over these next critical milestones here. Now that we're inside 5 minutes and switch to internal power, the next major milestone is coming up just a little over 3 minutes. We'll begin the auto-sequence handoff to terminal count. The computers will take over, and Antares will be counting down with those computers automatically to launch, targeting again 12:36 and 49 seconds p.m. Eastern Time.
Evet, son 3 dakika.
LC priming verified.
Roger that. MES1, we'll check 412. And we're now in terminal count. Phase 3 dynamic limit will be active at T-minus 3 minutes.
Three minutes and 15 seconds until launch. Terminal count targeting that exact liftoff time, 12:36 and 49 seconds. Tanks will be pressurized at about T-minus 40 seconds, and we'll be counting down to T0. Everything's good for launch today.
Auto sequence start.
Evet, son 2 dakika.
GNC1, step 418, verify ready for nav mode.
LC GNC1, orb nav, ready for nav.
And Ops 2, you go to switch to nav.
LC Ops 2, switch to nav.
Orb nav telemetry verified.
Copy all. Check 419 and check 420. TLM, you can switch link 41 to open loop.
LCTM copy. Link 41 open.
T-minus 2 minutes on my mark. Mark. T-minus 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Evet arkadaşlar, son 1 dakika.
T-minus 1 minute on my mark. Mark.
Son 30 saniye, çok az kaldı.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Sesi kısın.
T-minus 10.
Evet, son 10 saniye. Pardon, 20 saniye.
1. We have engine ignition.
Evet arkadaşlar, şimdi fırlatılıyor. Roket şimdi fırlatılıyor. Evet, şimdi roket yolculuğuna başladı. SpaceX'de olsaydı şimdi altta hız ve şeyi verirlerdi. Fakat bunu da vermiyorlar, ondan şu an ben de bilemiyorum.
The SS Katherine Johnson'ın takes flight on this, the 59th anniversary of John Glenn's Mercury flight, carrying 8,000 pounds of cargo to the International Space Station. Good performance on the first stage so far.
Engines at 100%, all systems nominal. Stage 1 continues nominal performance, engines at 100%. Good core pressures.
Evet, görüyorsunuz şimdi. Oradaki saat 17:37, bizim saatimiz 21:11.
Engines remain steady, attitude nominal. Max Q, attitude nominal.
First stage passing through the area of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket. 90 seconds into the flight. This first stage burns for a little over 3 minutes, 3 minutes 18 seconds until main engine cutoff.
About 90 seconds to stage 1 burnout.
Evet arkadaşlar, yaklaşık 10 dakika sonra uzaya varacak. 10 dakika sonra sizinle birlikte olacağız tekrardan.
T+2 minutes. All subsystems continue in nominal performance. All subsystems are nominal. We'll be ready to shift down to 80% on the engines at 170. Startup slow throttle down.
Throttling down at 3 minutes into the flight, main engine cutoff coming soon.
Throttle down to 55%. Main engine cutoff.
We have MECO, and Terry's entering into a coast stage. Fairing separation will occur about 30 seconds later. As we lose sight of the vehicle, now switching to animation. Some controlled firings on the interstage of the rocket.
Attitude nominal, good separation. "20 seconds to stage 2 ignition. All subsystems nominal. Fairing separation. Interstage separation.
Confirmed fairing separation and interstage.
Stage 2 ignition.
Stage 2 ignition confirmed. Stage 2 is a solid rocket motor, burns for about 2 minutes 44 seconds.
Evet arkadaşlar, şimdi roketin simülasyonunu görüyorsunuz.
Stage 2 will continue to burn for another approximately.
Kenarda altitude yazan yer yüksekliği, velocity yazan yerde alttaki yazan da saniye başına kilometresi.
138 kilometers. Mission time, 300 seconds. Velocity, 4.8 kilometers per second. Altitude, 150 kilometers. All systems continue to perform nominally.
Good calls, 5 minutes 15 seconds into today's flight.
Stage 2 motor pressure, nominal. Attitude nominal. Altitude is 170 kilometers, roughly 1 minute to stage 2 burnout. All stage 2 and GNC parameters continue to be nominal.
6 minutes 15 seconds into the flight, coming up on stage 2 burnout of that solid rocket motor. That'll initiate a 2-minute coast period until second stage separation.
Stage 2 starting to tail off. Roughly 15 seconds to burnout. Stage 2 burnout. Attitude nominal.
Stage 2 burnout, good attitude. We're in a coast period now. Cygnus exposed after that fairing separation, and will continue to carry the second stage with it until about 9 minutes into the flight.
Attitude nominal. Attitude nominal. Expected attitude control system thruster firings received. Continuing on course. Roughly 1 minute to payload separation. Altitude 185 kilometers. Velocity 7.5 kilometers per second. All systems continue to operate as expected.
Evet arkadaşlar, 2000 metre yüksekliğe çok az kaldı, görüyorsunuz. Artık roketlerini durdurmaya başladı.
30 seconds to spacecraft separation. Attitude nominal. Systems continue to perform as expected. Attitude corrections maintaining expectations.
LCGSO, I just released red team to the pad.
Copy that. Spacecraft separation.
Confirmed. 9 minutes into today's flight, Cygnus has separated from the second stage.
LC Ace, that concludes our callouts.
Copy that, Ace. Okay, NG-15, excellent job today. Let's go ahead and wrap up through this post-launch checklist. And Prop 1, can you report on status of pulse purging?
Pulse purging has just started.
Copy that. We'll check 430. And GNC-1LC.
Evet arkadaşlar, komite merkezini görüyoruz.
State factor to the Cygnus POC emailed, confirmed. Give me a call back on step 431.
Copy and work.
From the Wallops Range Control Center in Wallops Island, Virginia, some celebratory fist bumps as they successfully delivered Cygnus into orbit, a 9-minute flight on top of Antares from Virginia Space's Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport into orbit. Cygnus now flying free. The SS Katherine Johnson'ın in flight will make its 1.5-day journey, just a little shy of 2 days, to the International Space Station, arriving in the wee hours early morning on Monday, February 22nd.
Arm enable rotated, arm enable indication no longer illuminated.
Copy that, Ops 1. And Ops 1, disable your local launch enable button.
Ops 1, launch enable removed.
Flight controllers in Dulles, Virginia, Northrop Grumman's Mission Operations Center will take control of the Cygnus and monitor its approach to the International Space Station over the next couple of days. Solar array deployment coming in a couple of hours. Will be breaking before that, and we'll provide confirmation of that via our blog and social media. Before we depart with you today for our coverage of the launch of Northrop Grumman's CRS-15 mission to the International Space Station, we're bringing on Deputy Manager of the International Space Station Program, Kenny Todd, on with us to provide some remarks. Kenny, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Gary. Good morning. It's good to be with you.
Kenny, this launch comes ahead of a crew rotation and, of course, in the near term, some EVAs. From the perspective of the International Space Station Program, what is the significance of this mission, CRS-15?
Well, Gary, I mean, this particular mission has about 8,000 pounds of cargo coming to the space station, and roughly a third of it is going to be dedicated directly to utilization and science on board the station. And so, again, that's our bread and butter. That's what we're up there to do is really do the utilization and science that our commercial customers need, the things that we need to learn in order to go further into our solar system, our human research. And so we've got a lot of this flight that's dedicated to that kind of activity. In addition to that, we've got a little over a third of it that's dedicated just to basic vehicle systems maintenance hardware and some new technology that we're bringing on board. So again, as we look to go further away from low Earth orbit, the thing that we have to do is continue to learn about the systems that we're going to need, and the ISS provides a great platform for that. So we are launching some new hardware in the vehicle systems area that allow us to demonstrate some of this technology and ensure that it'll be there for us when we need it in the future. But then, as always, these Cygnus flights are very important to us because they bring up a lot of crew supplies as well. They are a workhorse when it comes to making sure that we keep our crews sustained on orbit with the different consumables that they need. So, again, a very important flight for us, and we're glad to see it off the ground and on the way to station.
Off the ground and on the way to station on time, Kenny. This is coming right on the heels of Texas having some severe winter weather. Now, how were international space...
Evet, şimdi fırlatışın tekrarını görüyoruz. Şimdi komite odası.
We got some key science objectives that we want to get going in that first couple of days. So the first 2 or 3 days after it gets there, we'll be heavily and intensely focused on the science that we need to get up and running. Then shortly after that, merely 4 or 5 days after that, we'll be heavy into doing a set of EVA preps we're at this point planning on going out to do an EVA in the possibly as early as next weekend. We've got a double and so we'll get busy on that as quick as we get the Cygnus get the science up and going that came up in Cygnus, and then we'll be on to doing EVAs.
A lot coming up here in the near term. Kenny Todd, thank you so much for joining us here at the end of our launch coverage.
Thanks for having me, Gary. I appreciate it.
Again, we had a successful launch of Northrop Grumman's CRS-15 mission on time today, 12:36 and 49 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. You're getting a live look at the Mission Operations Center in Dulles, Virginia. Northrop Grumman flight controllers taking control of the vehicle and will monitor its approach to the International Space Station over the next near 2 days until it arrives in the early morning of February 22nd, Monday morning. Robotic operators Suichi Noguchi and Mike Hopkins aboard the International Space Station will be poised at the controls of the Canadarm2, the robotic arm of the station, ready to capture it when it arrives Monday morning. The Cygnus is in orbit right now, but its solar arrays are not deployed. We will be wrapping up our coverage and providing confirmation of that solar array deployment here in the next couple of hours, and that it is receiving power and well on its way to make that journey to the International Space Station. Our coverage on Monday morning will begin at 2 a.m. Central Time, 3 a.m. Eastern, to monitor the approach and capture of Cygnus and the 8,000 pounds of cargo inside of the vehicle, and we'll also be providing coverage of the installation process. Robotic operators on the ground will take control of the robotic arm, maneuver into position on the nadir side of the International Space Station, the Unity module, where it will remain for the next several months into May before it departs with trash and science on board to be eventually burned up in the atmosphere. From Mission Control Houston and from all the teams that supported the launch, that'll wrap up our coverage of the CRS-15 mission today. We'll be with you again on Monday morning. Until then, this is Mission Control Houston.
Evet, şimdi uzay istasyonundan dünyayı görüyoruz.
Mission Control.
Evet arkadaşlar, bir videonun daha sonuna geldik. Eğer böyle yayınların ve videoların devamının gelmesini istiyorsanız kanalıma abone olabilir ve like atabilirsiniz. Kusura bakmayın, fotoğraf makinesinin şarjı bitti. Kameramı açamadım. Sonraki yayınlarda sizleri bekliyoruz. Hoşça kalın.